Here and really didn't know anyone. I wanted to get started on my career. I felt like I needed to be more active and give back. I wanted to be in a career that I loved, always learning, always following my goals. I knew I wanted to help people and create lasting change. I was looking for a way to connect with new people and make friends, something fun and social. Something that makes me a better person. Something meaningful. I've grown to know my neighbors and to work with them to improve our community. I'm becoming the impactful leader I want to be. And through it all, I've had fun and met some of the best people. I found connections, solved problems, made a difference. I've built a network, a community. We took action. We joined Rotaract.
And so welcome to the Rotary Club meeting for San Dimas of, well, what day is it? May 17th, 2023. I'm the president, Raymond Foster. Welcome to our club meeting. And that was a video about Rotaract. You know, at the beginning of our meetings, we have what we call the Rotary Minute. We currently in San Dimas have a Rotary Club. We have a satellite Rotary Club. We have an Interact Club. Now, the Interact Club is high school students, and there are 75 of those in the club. And between the regular club and our satellite club, we have almost 30 members. And we're talking to Life Pacific University, our university here, about forming a Rotaract Club, which will be our college students. And just to let you know, up and down the state of California, there are a great many Rotaract clubs in colleges. So we're kind of excited about that project and hope that will go along pretty quickly. So let's go around the wheel real quick, see who we've got in the room so far, and we're going to keep moving along. Let's go with Glenn. Introduce yourself, Glenn.
My name is Glenn Johnson. I'm a founding member of the Rotary Satellite Club.
Excellent. Good to have you here today, Glenn. And Rita?
Sorry, I'm on mute. My name is Rita McGee. I'm an attorney out here in San Dimas, specializing in estate planning, probate, and business formation and litigation.
And you know what, Rita, what's really cool is you are no longer the junior Rotarian in the club. We're going so fast. You're at your third meeting and you're no longer the new person on the block. That is pretty cool. I think
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I find all the work you guys do very noble, and that's I wanted to be. And then yesterday I didn't stand up when you said, you know, when you introduced the Rotarians, and I'm like, man, I'm a Rotarian. I should have stood up.
Well, I was glad to see you there. Glad to see everybody. And Mike Wallace is in. Why don't you introduce yourself, Mike?
Hi, everyone. Mike Wallace, president of Better Home Financial, mortgage brokerage, downtown San Dimas. Been a Rotarian about 8 years now, officially 8 years, actually, I think. And I'm happy to be here serving the community. And it's good to see, Raymond, that it looks like you're wearing the exact same thing that you were wearing yesterday. Just kidding.
It's actually, Mike, a different suit. But I was wearing this combination last week, so you're sort of right. Yeah, I purposely put a different suit on, but yes, it's different. But Glenn has seen that if I stand up, it is a Zoom suit, so I'll just leave that to your imagination. Diva.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Diva Alfaro. I am, what is it, I always forget, 4 years almost Rotarian, or am I adding too much? But 4 year Rotarian, a past president. I am a risk and financial advisory consultant for Deloitte, and I'm just happy to be here.
We're glad you're here also, Diva. So before we get to our speaker, a couple things we got going on. Last night was Teacher of the Year, which we contributed to, and that was a great event. Thank you, everyone who was present. Over 150 people attended the event. We honored 10 teachers from our schools here in San Dimas. All the feedback I'm getting is that the event was very good. And Sylvia's not here, one of our Rotarians, CEO of the chamber, but I hope she's taking the day off because she's the one who did most of the heavy lifting on that. That was a fabulous event. Kickout and installation is on June 21st. Mark your calendars. That will be at Zendejas. That is a party meeting. You kick me out and install Steve. And then on coming up, we have 2 committee meetings this month still. For food drive is on 5/24. That's for the Satellite Club, another drive. The city put out down, if you saw this, the city put out on Facebook a post from the 29 Palms Marine Corps that said, "Thank you, the city of San Dimas." Originally, they sent me one that said, "Thank you, Rotary Club of San Dimas." But so many organizations in San Dimas participated, from Holy Name to the San Dimas Masonic Lodge, the Chamber of Commerce. I had them do it to the city, and then the city just took that and ran with it, which I thought was pretty cool. So we're going back to do that again. And then, of course, the first meeting of the Marine Corps Dinner Committee will be on the 25th. So we got some good committee meetings coming up. And then finally, I'm going to get kicked out of this job, and I'm doubly excited about that. So let's go to our speaker. Doctor, you just told me how to say your name, brother. You're going to tell me again because I need brain plasticity.
Michael Merzenich is my
That's
name.
right. Dr. Michael Merzenich was the founding CEO of the Scientific Learning Corporation, which markets and distributes software that applies principles of brain plasticity to assist children with language learning and reading. Dr. Michael is the brain behind BrainHQ and the author of Softwired, How the New Science of Brain Plasticity Can Change Your Life. For nearly 5 decades, he's been a leading pioneer in brain plasticity research as a co-founder and chief scientific officer of Posit Science. Dr. Merzenich heads the company's science team. He's published more than 150 articles in leading peer-reviewed journals, such as Science and Nature. That's fabulous. Received numerous prizes and awards, including the Russ Prize, the Ipsen Prize, the Zülch Prize, the Thomas Alva Edison Patent Award. He's been granted nearly 100 patents. His work has been highlighted in hundreds of books about brain learning and rehabilitation. He was awarded in 2016 one of the top world's neuroscience prizes, the Kavli Prize, for his achievements in the field of brain plasticity. In the late 1980s, he was on a team that invented the cochlear implant, now distributed by the market leader Advanced Bionics, and in 1996, founding CEO of the Scientific Learning Corporation. And he's now the author of Softwired. And Doctor, I'm excited to have you here. Well, tell us all about this stuff.
Well, okay. It's really nice to be with you, and I'm going to go right to my slides, so you won't have to look at my my ugly mutt so often so much. And we're going to start talking about this science. So, am I sharing with you?
You're not yet, but you are allowed to.
Okay. Well, I'm being a bad boy here. I can do this.
All right, there it is.
Okay. So I want to say at the outset, I'm going to talk about brain health and performance, and I'm specifically going to focus on brain plasticity science. There's been a revolution in our understanding of the brain and issues that relate to its health and our neurological performance, the origins of our neurological abilities. And that's what I want to talk with you about. I want to talk with you about it personally, and I want to talk about it a little bit scientifically and a little bit about what prospect for what it means for our future. Before I do that, I just want to say something about Rotary. I believe in Rotary. I think Rotary is a great organization. I've supported it in a number of ways over the years. I'm a big supporter of a Rotary project that's primarily centered in the nation of Morocco. It focuses on bringing rehabilitation services to people who operate in the Arabic language. And the reason that I focus on that is because of friendships there, but also because of the fact that it's been neglected there. So trying to help people in a part of the world where there's relatively limited services for people that need physical help in rehabilitation, neurological help in psychiatric treatment and care, neurological support and help that relate to their neurological struggles, especially focusing on children. So that's what. And one wonderful thing about Morocco is in an extension in language, it extends all across a large part of the world that's in which there's tremendous amount of neglect. And this is a Rotary-sponsored project. How wonderful. that Rotary's been behind this, among other things. And a number of other ways I've tried to help Rotary. I think you guys are do-gooders, and that's why I'm here with you today. Okay, I know in your own community you're making a difference. I also want to say at the outset that this science is very complicated. Hundreds of thousands of scientific reports relate to the science. And we're going to fly over it at high altitude. So just understand that beneath this is a massive amount of information and data. This is well-established science there's a deep level of understanding of how the brain is operating now. And this is absolutely something that's occurred across my lifetime, primarily across my lifetime as a scientist. So we have to go through this process, you could say, sort of at a high altitude, but put up with that. Now, you could say, well, why has everyday medicine still virtually ignores brain health as an issue? When you go to the doctor says, well, how you doing? How you doing, Bill? I guess I'm all right. You just had your annual brain exam. Now, why this most important of organs are we doing so little to actually sustain its health? Why don't we worry more about its organic status or its organic health in everyday medicine? We actually wait for disaster. Wait until you are really struggling to control yourself, or you're not sure you can still manage your life in a psychiatric illness, or you're beginning to fail in some ultimately disaster-headed neurological condition, or you get a whack in the head, and then the doctor takes you seriously. And really what I want to say is that we have learned things about brain medicine that will change this, are changing this perspective rapidly. Brain medicine, everyday brain medicine is becoming a fact. Currently, a child goes to school and they are required to take a physical exam. Where's the brain exam? What's more important to the child as they show up in school than the status of the organic health of the brain machine inside their head? Nothing. And yet, in a sense, we check their ears, their eyes, but not their brain itself. We assume it's healthy because they have one. If we're not obviously medical ill and can't remember which way up is, no one is paying much attention to the status of our neurology. Now, why hasn't medicine caught the neuroscience wave? And that's a little bit of what I want to talk about. In fact, there has been a revolution. And up to this, into the second half of the 20th century, we believed that the brain grew up as a baby. When you're a baby, brain reached a mature state. All of the cells were intact, wiring is intact. It's like the computer on your desk. It was hardwired. The only thing that could really happen to it from that point forward to the end of life was it could deteriorate. You were stuck with the brain you were born with, more or less. For a long period in our history, the intelligence quotient of a child was defined when they came to school, and the teacher understood that defined their prospects forward in life. Nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, the brain is continually remodeling itself, continually revising itself all across the course of your life. No other organ has this capacity. It's actually continually changing itself, specializing itself as a function of how you use it. Now that is another way of saying that what it's been through up to the point of time, for example, when that child enters the schoolhouse door, matters very much for how you would weigh the capabilities of that child. To a large extent, they can be credited with, the neurological status could be credited with, advantaged by, or disadvantaged by what's happened in their young life up to that point. But their brain, in fact, is continuously plastic, and in no way does that define them or their going forward potential. The brain is a continuous work in progress from before you're born to the day you die, continually subject to change and revision and remodeling all across the term of your life. Now, your brain plasticity, the way the brain is changing itself, is actually accomplishing three wonderful things that I'd like to emphasize. And the first is that it actually creates that world inside, that world that your world. It's all a creation in your brain, and it's actually derived from quadrillions of moments of change in the connection and the functional operations in your brain itself. It actually evolves in you. Your brain is the most complicated machine in existence on planet Earth. It has the capacity to store information equivalent to the accessible information on the internet. You have that capacity inside your skull. Okay, it's an incredibly powerful information gathering and information representing device. It's very much a function of where you've been in life. Very much a function of what, and you've been in a peculiar pace in life. You've evolved at a particular period in the evolution of civilization. I'm very, very curious. The tools that you use had no precedent 100 years ago. Almost every minute you spend in your life has relatively limited precedent for the average life 100 years ago. You have within you an incredibly complicated machine that's creating incredibly and specialized in all kinds of ways that basically have adapted you to these strange exigencies that apply to a modern life in the world. Now take this boy that's bouncing a soccer ball on his head. See this boy on the left? Well, can you imagine where that boy might be from? Well, he's from Sao Paulo in Brazil. Did you know that in Sao Paulo, 40% of boys in his age can do what he's doing there? They can run while they're bouncing and controlling a soccer ball bouncing on their head. How many boys do you know can do that? Not so many, right? That's another way of saying that we're all specialized by the curiosities that apply to the environment in which we happen to have evolved in. We're all incredibly specialized by those environments. We've all created special powers that relate to the world we've grown in and we're hopefully thriving in. Now, second, plasticity has also created yourself. And it's created this by a massive schedule of self-reference. So every time you think, every time you feel, every time you act, the brain is making an association with that feeling, with that thought, of that action, and an association with its source, and that source is you. And you've grown in your brain by billions and billions of associations that have related you to that information that you're receiving, or that action that you're making, or that thought you're having. And this incredible production in your brain ultimately grows to a level in which it establishes control of the actions of the machine. This is the most important and powerful creation through plastic processes in your brain. Now, you might imagine that this also doesn't always occur in a fabulous way. That some brains might be struggling because of the great difficulties that they're faced with early in life, and don't do quite as good a job as other people in creating a good or effective captain of their ship. And you'd be right. There are very significant differences in the power, with the efficiency with which this self-creation has been generated in a brain. But one of those wonderful things that's occurring is the creation of self. And of course, it's a work in progress. You're continually evolving in your personhood, in the individual that you are, in that self, in that creation, that miraculous creation that's evolved within your skull, within your life. And third, the brain is progressively evolving and specializing its information processing machine. And it's advancing or declining, I might say. In general, it's advancing as a direct function of its success in your operations in the world. And it's specializing your brain as the individual is adapting to the tools and challenges of its owner's idiosyncratic environment. Now, to cite a simple example, you acquire the ability to read, and your brain evolves machinery that's not there. It's not operational. It's not effective. You're not making this translation of the sound parts of words into these little squiggles we call letters, and that ultimately received at high speed and interpreted at high speed with amazing control of the eyes and interpreting this information. I mean, this is an acquisition that requires incredibly complicated changes in the physical wiring of our brain. It's not there until you create it by using your brain. And you've done this as you've acquired skill after skill, ability after ability, power after power. Well, every refined ability you have has been refined, has been specialized, has been advanced in your life by how you've applied your brain. and how you've used your brain in the acquisition or improvement of that skill or ability. So what is changing exactly as the brain is remodeling itself throughout life? It's evolving its unique experiences. Well, the first thing it's doing is it's revising its detailed wiring. We call these synaptic connections between the nerve cells of the brain. And it's also revising its elementary processing machinery in all kinds of other ways that enable the skills and the abilities that define you. Now there's a tremendous amount of scientists about this. We really understand these processes. We understand the rules that apply to them. We understand them to a level in which we can, to a substantial extent, change the wiring in the brain of an individual at will by engaging the brain in skill acquisition in a controlled way. That we can drive all kinds of positive changes in the brain by engaging this machinery following those rules. Now, as it's doing that, it's just like your body when you physically exercise your body. It's also changing many other things that support those more advanced operations in the brain. For example, you exercise your brain appropriately and you can dramatically improve the vascular control of nutrients to the areas of the brain that are now engaged in the activity that's so important or newly important to you. You engage the brain in all kinds of ways, every kind of way that supports its strengthening, its growth. Your brain needs exercise just as much as your body needs exercise to sustain its health, to sustain its vigor. It's not just the wiring that's changing. Everything that supports those changes are empowered. It's advancing the machinery that's controlling change itself. No more critical machinery in your brain than to have that machinery that's controlling its own capacity to evolve or change or improve by exercising it. It's primarily exercised by a continuous acquisition of new ability or new skill. That's the primary way that it's engaged. Or in it's powerfully exercised by living a life that's a novelty-seeking life, a life in which you're not into the humdrum. You're continually challenging your brain. You're out there in the world. You're continually paying attention. You're continually working to understand the world. You're continually engaged in the world. When you do that, you're engaging this machinery that drives change. And it's continually empowered by positive human interactions. Showing up at this Rotary Club every week and being in your friendly communications and the spirit of help, generous help, and that's a positive contribution to this machinery. These changes are physical. There's no real such a thing as mental. It's physical. This is a physical organ. The product of all of that change is the creation of a unique and continuously evolving person. Now, because those changes are based upon literally quadrillions of change, moments of change, and because your progression in life has been unique to you, no one else has had the identical experiential history as you have. Your brain, that machine inside your skull, is absolutely unique to you. No one has a brain just like yours. You're one of a kind. What an amazing thing that is. That each one of us comes through this world and we evolve in an absolutely idiosyncratic and individual way. We are one and only, the only one and only us there will ever be. That's a kind of miracle. Now, I want to emphasize 4 important things we've learned about brain plasticity to relate to its practical considerations in our life. And the first is the brain is just like your body. Of course, it grows in power as a function of how you use it, and it needs exercise. Now, we don't think about exercising our brain. Well, we do sort of vaguely, but then what the hell does exercise mean? How would we exercise? What would a brain gym look like? Exactly. I mean, we're systematically thinking about how healthy our brain is. How would we know it's healthy or unhealthy? And how would we exercise it in ways that increase its health? Now, this is obviously a fundamental consideration. We're going to talk about this a little bit later. And second, the processes that control plasticity are all reversible. Wow. What does that mean exactly? Well, it means, for one thing, that it's just as easy to drive you north as south. I could train you in a way that within 4 or 5 or 6 weeks could destroy your ability to understand what I'm saying. Or I could flip that training and I could train you in a way that actually improve your ability to understand what I'm saying, even under the most difficult of circumstances. I could train you in a way that would could turn your hand into a useless claw within 3 or 4 weeks. Or I could train you in a way that would improve the ability for you to control or manipulate or identify objects that you hold within your hand within those 2 or 3 weeks. The processes are bidirectional. Now, one of the things that we've done to study this is to study the differences in the brain of someone's near the end of life versus someone that's at the prime of life. And we've done this in animal models, and we've done this in human studies. And we've looked at many, many aspects of physical, functional, chemical brain. And researchers in my laboratory have done these experiments. And we ask, we've also looked at animals that have had, and also humans, that have had a terrible early life. You could say the worst of childhoods, or have had a normal early life, an enriched childhood. And then we've looked at the brain that's in the prime of life versus the brain of the animal that's had a terrible childhood in the prime of life that's had a normal and happy life. And we've asked, well, in these two classes, the very old and the very young, or the young adult, you could say, with a horrible childhood, young adult with a good childhood, what's different in the brain? And we've looked at about 35, 36 things, physical, functional, chemical. What's different? The answer is everything's different. Everything you measure is different. 36 for 36. Then we say, well, how many of those things that are different advantage the brain that's had a bad childhood, advantage the brain that's old, just old? And the answer is none of them. In every way, young and vigorous is better than old and slow. In every way. Now, I might say, just so relate to aging, there's great variation in human aging. I'm talking about a statistical average. There are old people that are paragons. Okay, I bet you there's some in this room. But there are also old people that are absolutely in the tank. You know, everything is really bad compared to a young, vigorous person. Then we ask the third critical question. How many of these things, how many of these 36 things are reversible? How many of these things, if we engage the brain, no medicine here exactly, we're just going to train the brain, we're going to engage it. How many of these things can be driven back to a youthful state? And the answer is all of them can be driven in a strong youthful direction. Everything is reversible. Now you can say, well, why the hell would Mother Nature or God, creator of the universe, create a brain that is broadly reversible in its plastic operations? And we believe the reason is because the brain is designed to get the answers right to the big questions in life that support your survival. And the brain is continually making adjustments, you could say, to operate as powerfully as it can, given the circumstances that it's in. And the last thing it's losing control of is the ability to get the answers right to support your survival. And so you can have a lot of deterioration in an old age, or you could have a lot of deterioration when you've had a terrible childhood and still survive. But that doesn't mean you're operationally healthy. That doesn't mean your brain is healthy. Doesn't mean things are well in there, right? But the good news is that it's all reversible. It's all reversible. Third, many factors that can arise in life actually degrade brain health and performance. So it's not just that you can maybe have the misfortune of having a terrible childhood. Things will happen to you. They happen to all of us. And those things occur in two forms. One relates to how you live your life. So you know the average American spends 11 hours a day sitting in a chair. You know that? And generally when they're sitting in a chair, they're watching the world go by and the screen in front of them on some level. The majority of their time, it begin about 10, 11 hours a day. People do this. Everything that's important is within the limits of that screen. And they're not exactly in a highly active personal state when they're doing that. They're passive receiver of information. And then they go out in the world and, hey, listen, we paved the damn thing. Even when you go on a walk in the park, you know, we try to make sure that every footfall is certain. We live in a highly artificial environment, in a highly artificial world. We're basically depriving ourselves of all kinds of, you could say, neurological engagement that would be good for us when we do that. And then, of course, there are various things we're addicted to. I mean, there's some of them occur in quite different forms, and they're actually brain damaging. Those addicted things we're affected by. And then, you know, increasingly, we look up the answer to just about everything. We're not exercising our reasoning powers as much as we used to. We can find the answer to almost everything on the internet. And now I guess we're evolving to the point in which I don't know, living in the metaverse, maybe really AI, really. We're gonna try to live a life in which we really don't really have a use for a brain, because there's always a better one available for the internet. Is that really where we want to go? So in some ways, the damage to us in our, for example, in our aging or in a child is self-inflicted. Doesn't have to be this way. But of course, hundreds of other unasked for troubles also emerge in our life history that can add to our brain struggles. There are about 200 different conditions that are well documented in epidemiological medicine that accelerate our progression to dementia. Now, these are just 50. I stopped at 50. Okay. Now, what's happening in all of these cases, almost all of these cases, is that these things change the processes in our brain to make them noisier, and they result in the brain slowing down and degrading its operations, which is on the path to dementia. And generally, they're not directly addressed. Some of them are occupational. We do certain jobs, and we have an accelerated path to dementia. If I work as a prison guard, first of all, I'm not going to live on the average beyond my 65th birthday. And I'm going to do that struggling. It's job infliction. Now, if I'm in prison, I'm in the same situation. They're torturing one another, and across the two sides of the bars, they're both going to live a short life, and they're going to be demented at a young age. In all kinds of ways, that people do not suspect. Their brains are subject to a downturn, and it should be addressed. The vicissitudes of life should be being actively addressed in a well-managed life. Of course, they're not now. Medicine is ignoring this to a substantial extent. Now, the fourth important lesson is that the neurological weaknesses and distortions that plague individuals can usually be overcome by appropriate brain exercise. Not always, especially when it comes to genetic faults and genetic issues. But most problems that come from environmental causes or from our own bad habits can usually become at least substantially overcome by appropriate brain exercise. So I'd like to talk in my final comments about 4 examples of how we and others are trying to use this science to transform modern societies in our medicines. And the first point of emphasis I want to make is that we're working hard to try to develop strategies for sustaining wellness. And by that, what we're trying to do is we're trying to install in everyday medicine the delay or prevention of progressions to psychiatric and neurological disease, and also to improve brain health, as brain health is contributing importantly to contributing factors that contribute to body failure and body health, physical health in the body. So basically, we're doing this by more extensively and more reliably continuously monitoring neurological status in individuals. We can do this quite inexpensively now. We have the capacity to look at the performance limits of a brain relatively easily by having a person look at progressive assessment task on a computer backed up, if necessary, by recording the brain in action in different ways using imaging or brain recording strategies. So we begin in general screening by basically defining the performance limits of system after system in the brain. You can do this on your own, sitting in front of your computer or your iPad or your pad, a smart pad, and you can basically, or even a smartphone, and you can basically evaluate, provide information to your doctor about what your general neurological status is. And that's an indication of a problem. It's easy to carry this to recording strategies that can look at that can carry that evaluation to a deeper depth. And the whole idea is then, on the basis of that information, to make adjustments that would contribute to sustaining general health. We can now very inexpensively assess brain health status, and we can identify individuals who bear environmental and genetic risk for disease onsets. Of course, we also want to look at the genomic information to know whether or not you carry those special weaknesses that might apply in your genetics. We also look in blood and other ways, because we can look at thousands of chemicals now in blood, proteins and other analytes in blood. And they also inform us about the status of things that are applied to your neurology. The reason for that is that in general, the brain is protected from providing larger chemicals in the blood that would signal disease. But when diseases begin to emerge, or when problems begin to emerge, that barrier becomes leaky, and those chemical markers do flow into the blood and are detectable. So we're using all of these assets basically to say general health status that relates to your brain, and then we're doing something about it. The whole idea is to sustain everyone in good health as long as possible and as completely as possible. Lifestyle changes, computerized training, dietary adjustments can usually sustain brain health and or grow resilience, and this is what we're trying to accomplish. Actually, the goal is to apply this from cradle to grave. Again, paying attention to the status of the brain every time you go to the doctor. And we're monitoring his health, and we're trying to react to it in an intelligent, and positive, and helpful way to sustain health as well as we can all across the course of a life. Example 2 is rescuing environmentally damaged and genetically challenged and physically injured youth. So in the present era, about 30% of the young people in American society are set up to fail. Behind a black ball that comes from environmental forces and to a lesser extent from genetic factors that are setting them up to failure because we're not responding to them. So if you look at individuals that fail by almost any criteria, look at who ultimately develops mental illness in our societies, who ultimately ends up in prison or trouble with the law in our society, that's about a third of males in American society, on one level or another, are going to have some kind of trouble sustaining their good behavior with us. And they are all showing up at school, and they're all very clear indications that they're struggling. About half of them are clearly subject to physical, emotional, and not all too often sexual abuse as children. Many of them are subject to bullying all across their childhood. Many of them are set up to fail in school, so that again, they think of themselves as an inadequate kid, as a loser. You know, if a boy shows up at school and is failing at school, struggling to read, and if that boy beginning to misbehave, act up, as a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, there's more than a 60% chance that that boy will commit a felony before his 30th birthday. Now, who's at fault for that? Who does nothing to help that child get past that neurologically? We're at fault. And you know, the majority of the individuals that aren't in prison because they have had a terrible childhood are either frankly mentally ill or have had head injury. Most people that are in prison in the United States that can't live with us, must be banished from us, are there because of factors that are substantially beyond your control. And I know that people don't like to hear this. People commonly do not like to hear this, but it's a fact. It's a medical, neurological fact. And to a very large extent, the problem has arisen because we don't address it in childhood. We have an obligation, morally, socially, to identify every struggling child and to manage their brain health across the time in which they're with us as young children, especially as innocent young children, and help them. We can do a better job of this. We can now inexpensively identify these individuals, and we can substantially normalize the organic health of most of them using a scalable combination of school and technology delivered training. We're trying hard to do this. Now I'm going to say one more thing, and this is political. This is political. The governor, we have big projects running in Florida. Governor of Florida just said that we cannot do this kind of program in a school in Florida without every parent's permission. And the problem with that is if you're abusing your child, the last thing you want to do is give permission for that child to get any help in school. It's just wrong. It's just wrong. We can't stand in the way of seeing that children have a certain level of independence in their operations for a good, honest attempt in medicine and in school by trying to help a child that's behind the eight ball like that. We have to look beyond that, but to be a little bit more sympathetic to the child himself. So that's the end of my politics. Other than that. So example 3 is strictly on-job performance. So broadly across the US, we're trying to help people get better at whatever is really important to them. Now, some of those things are in their hobby or happy side of their, some of the things are on the job. So here's, it's easy to assess performance in terms.
I got you, I see you. Marianne.
Here's a guy that we've trained quite a bit, Tom Brady. He actually began training about 10 years ago. His performance improved. Now, if Tom Brady's performance can improve when he's training, yours can too, just so you know. Everybody's performance can improve. We've demonstrated when we train policemen, they shoot less often when they shouldn't, by a lot. There's about half as many citizen complaints against their behavior of the subsequent year than there were the year before. They resort to physical action, inappropriate physical action, about half as often. And they shoot straighter. Okay, so that's you could say that's mostly good. Know what they're shooting. We train people that work in a dangerous job, and we dramatically reduce their accident rates. More than 60% reduction of accident rates for people that work in dangerous jobs. And that turns out that benefit is, it's good for a couple of years. They're on the ball for a couple, then they have to retrain after 3 or 4 years and sharpen again. Basically, you can have a dramatic effect on the accident rates of drivers or people that climb poles, all kinds of people. We've trained soldiers. We trained every soldier in a couple armies in the world. Not going to go into, they're all on the good guy side. We train special forces and other people in ways that improve their skills and abilities because we can make a difference. We've trained people in engineering outfits and in high-tech operations and other places like this, and we can improve their performance ability, and we can demonstrate their efficiency and productivity is improved as a consequence. We can actually see the changes in their brain. All these things can be recorded by recording from their brain. There's going to be a sort of revolution in how we think about the world of work and neurological performance that relates to it. And that's beginning to happen. And then the last thing I want to emphasize is, and that's probably the most important to this audience, is that you can create a stronger you. Now, once you understand that your brain is continuously plastic, and then how you use it basically relates both to its health and to your operational powers, then you're just a damn fool if you don't engage this God-given or Mother Nature-given resource to improve yourself and improve your life. Why wouldn't you do that? I mean, we have the same clear sense or that we must do that for our physical body. we've got to be out there on a certain level. We got to be active physically because we have to sustain ourselves. We want to be able to hop and dance and have fun and still climb the mountain. We don't want to give that up. We want to keep our physical life intact. But it's the same with our neurological health and life. Now, you can begin by objectively assessing your organic brain health and neurological performance abilities. Now, we've tried to make this easy for people. We've created a training strategy, which is commonly, called BrainHQ. There are several other ways that you could do this as well. If you read my book, you can get some indication of what you might do to assess your own strategy. We'll talk about develop your own strategy. But in BrainHQ, you can simply compare how you do on basic tasks that relate to, that define the performance limits that you have with other people of your age. Or you could say, if you're older, you might want to compare your performance with the performance limits of the average 20-year-old. Go for that. Why not drive your performance abilities to be well above their performance limits or abilities? Whatever age you see. In a sense, you can define the effective age of your brain and your brain's operations. And then regularly exercise your brain in ways that improve your organic health and or live your everyday life to the advantage of the health and performance of your brain. You don't have to go to the brain gym if you do other things that are brain health intelligent. But you do need to exercise your brain in direct and in obvious and not infrequent ways. And by this, I don't mean just read another book or I mean skill acquisition. I mean driving your improvements in your skills and abilities in ways that are systematically advancing them, that are speeding up your brain, that are increasing its accuracy and reliability of operations and performance. That's what you need to do. Now, it's pretty easy to do this in a lot of ways on a computer, in part, but there are also many things, again, that you can do in everyday life. And then manage your brain health. Come back every so often and reassess and sustain your brain in a healthy status and keep it there. Now, we know that if you engage the brain of an average older individual, let's say you're circa age 75, and this is all based upon randomized controlled trials, like 70, 75, you train for 10 hours. We know that you can highly significantly reduce the probability you'll progress to dementia over the next 10 years. We know that if you train for 10 hours and then a year later train for another 1 to 2 hours, and then wait 2 more years and then another 1 to 2 hours, we know that over the next 10 years, that reduction will be more than 50%. Half as many people will develop dementia. That's for 14 hours of total training time spent on a computer, saving half of the people from progressing to dementia. That's a big effect. No drug, including the drug that's just been approved, has anything like that power of effect. And this is a randomized controlled trial. Okay, so I'm just saying, and think of your ability to sustain your brain health if you're actually serious and you're actually training yourself more seriously. You're regularly engaging your brain to keep yourself fit and capable. I think most people can be protected against the progression to dementia by engaging your brain appropriately across the course of their life. And from many other progressive neurological diseases, virtually every serious psychiatric and neurological condition has a prodromal period. You can see them humming years in advance. You can see them coming in brains that are inherently weak by really easily identified neurological criteria. All of those things are reversible. I think we're going to come into a period in which the primary focus in all neurological corrective medicine will be, first of all, to restore us to health by these natural strategies, and then to keep us there and to sustain our health. Now, we've tried to help in accomplish this by developing adaptive training programs. They're called BrainHQ. This is a little bit of a sales thing. I don't mean it to be that way. I'm just saying that I'm very interested in trying to deliver this in a way that's effective, and this is supported by about 300 peer-reviewed publications in scientific journals, in about 200 randomized controlled trials. Almost all of them show highly positive results, both in changing the brain physically and changing the brain functionally in all kinds of struggling people. You can go to the BrainHQ site and you can see all of those reports. You can read them or review them if you like, to any condition that might apply to you or any problem might apply to you, and make your own judgment about it. And I strongly advise you to do this as you think about engaging in brain training and brain health. Just go to the site and see what is the real scientific basis, what is the real scientific evidence that this does or does not, is or is not effective for someone like me. And you'll see lots of evidence that for most people that struggle with neurological related issues, there's some demonstration of effectiveness of using these strategies. They're adaptive, so they adjust to whatever your ability level are. They're optimized to rapidly gain or drive improvements. They're just like the gym. It's not always clear why you're doing what you're doing on the computer, but it's all based upon, as the gym is based upon, all of the equipment sits in the gym because the things that is driving to improve are important to your physical body, and the things that are in the brain gym driving to improve are important to your neurological health and body and physical brain. So this is one strategy, and it's also relatively inexpensive. I might say at the end of this talk, if anyone from the San Dimas Rotary wants to use this program, try to look at this program, just contact me and I'll send you a subscription. So out in the real world, live your everyday life to the advantage of your brain. First, adopt a life of continuous new skill acquisition. Okay, challenge your brain continually. You're not done. You're not done acquiring new ability. You're not done basically still advancing yourself and your understandings of things, or ability to master new skills or abilities, or to improve the things that have been important to you all your life even more. And as you exercise your physical body, which you have to do, remember that your physical body is controlled by your brain. Don't just sit on the treadmill and say, this is it for me. Actually use that time also to exercise your brain's mastery of the control of your body. Now think about what a brain and body related exercise regimen might look like, or what it might involve. I know pickleball sounds like a silly game, or ping pong, or they're actually pretty good for physical exercise and neurological exercise in an integrated form. And there's lots of things like that you could do. Master your understanding, adaptation to the actions in physical operate in the real world. Get off the damn computer all the time. Get off the cell phone all the time. Get back in the real world and remember that that's what you were designed to operate in. That's what all of your senses, all of your capacities are all about. They're for operations in the real world. Get out there and move in it again. Get out there and respond in it. Get your feet dirty. Mindful beats the hell out of mindless. Wake up to yourself. Wake up to your physical environment. Smell the roses. You know, most people, if you say, well, just think about what's on your street. Now tell me in detail, you might just said, no, what's on there? Go house by house and tell me what they have in their yard. Most people have an amazingly sparse ability to describe what they pass in their world every day. And you could ask yourself, does that apply to you? You really understand that street you drive by every day, what's really on that street? Why aren't you paying more attention? Do you think that a person in the native human condition 10,000 years ago could survive if they didn't keep track of what was on their street, equivalent to their street? And the answer is no, they couldn't. That's what you're designed to do. You're designed to be attentive. You're designed to be engaged. You're designed to be alert. You're designed to look for the differences, the nuances. You're designed to appreciate them. Speed and sharpen it up. If your brain is operating under control with high accuracy, high reliability at speed, the only way you can be accurate and fast and reliable is if you have a brain that's relatively advanced. Those are signature qualities of a brain that's really effective. Speed directly creates it's the largest single factor that contributes to intelligence. your ability to understand. And the reason is that a brain that's fast is a brain that's representing information with high resolution, moment by moment in time. So it's a really good, if you want a simple criteria to know whether your brain is in good shape, look at its operations at speed. So it's all about a better you. It's all about growing a better you. It's all about, so first address those vicissitudes, grow your special talents and performance into numbers, address your personal weaknesses on the path to a better you, establish a growth trajectory for life. You have one chance for living a great life on earth. Make the most of it.
So, Doctor, let's do this. We're gonna keep going. What I'd like to do is because we want to keep that 1 hour for the television. Give your contact website and
Okay.
then
I got it right. I got it right here. And if you have a personal question, I'm glad to answer a personal question. I'm actually done. And if you want to receive a free subscription to BrainHQ, just let me know and I'll send one to you. And and what's indicated in this long URL at the bottom, I know most people won't. Michael.Merzenich@positscience.com. You can reach me there. And another starting point for getting more information is to read this book. Anyway, that's where we're coming from here. And
okay, so and anybody wants to get more information, they can send an email to sandymasrotary@gmail.com.